You too.
We'll talk about that FedEx truck in a second here. So what about the crop modes on the Leica Q2? Now, what I'm about to show you guys is highly unscientific. I'll tell you why in a couple seconds, but I set out to kind of compare with the gear that I have. They have somewhat similar focal lengths, what they look like, the crop mode of the Q2 versus the cameras I have. So what I used was, of course, the Leica Q2, and I shot it in 28, 35, and 50. So there's that. Then I shot the Leica M10, and I just received off that FedEx truck this Voigtlander 21 millimeter. I put it in the test just because if people get curious what a 21 millimeter lens looks like versus the supposed 28 millimeter Q2, and then what I did for the Fuji as well. So that's in there. The first shot I took had a little bit of fogginess to it because it just came off the truck and I threw it right on the camera. But anyways, the Voigtlander 21 millimeter, this cheapo little 7 Artisans 35 millimeter f2. It's like a Chinese carbon copy of the old 35 Summicron, and then the 50 millimeter Summicron that I own. So we have 28, 35, and 50 crop modes on the Q2, and then we have 21, 35, and 50 on the M10. Again, both Leica cameras, both full frame sensors, and I shot them at all essentially the same settings, all wide open for the lens that I had on there. And then here's the Fuji one. For the Fuji, I would show you, I shot with the 16 1.4. Again, that's about a 24 millimeter. It's a tiny bit wider than the Q2. The 23 f2, so you can start kind of see the depth of field differences. And then, I don't have it in here, the 30 millimeter Sigma 1.4, which is about 45 millimeter field of view. It's close to 50. So that's what we ended up going with on the 3 different cameras. I stood in the same spot, tried to frame exactly the same. I tried to shoot all the lenses wide open and try to keep the ISO as low as I could, but at a shutter speed that kept it steady. And then I imported into Capture One. Now, 2 things with Capture One. The Leica Q2 crop mode settings do not come in applied to the raw files. I think they do on Lightroom, but yeah, I use Capture One, so that was that. What I did was I went and looked at my Leica M10 and my Fuji X-T5 files, and I just cropped them to try to be similar. You can see I'm off a little bit, but you guys kind of get the idea. Pay attention to background blur, separation, and if you were to think about that image in isolation, would you know it was a cropped image? That's the first thing. The second thing is for the Fuji file, I set it on ProVia Standard, because I feel like that's kind of got the most natural. It's not like a nostalgic negative or classic negative or a classic chrome. And just made some slight adjustments to exposure where it made sense. For both the Leica and Q2 and the M10, I just left them on their standard profile and as they come into Capture One. I'll say this as you see these images. I did have to apply a little more saturation to the M10 files. The SL2S and also the Q2 I noticed because they're a different sensor. I think they're a Sony-based sensor. They come with a bit more saturation and punch versus I think it's a Belgian-made sensor that's inside the M10. So I did that. So anyways, I just took 2 photos, or 2 subjects. My son at those 3 different focal lengths for each camera, and then the red bird on my porch, this little wood bird, at the 3 focal lengths for all 3 cameras. And so I will stop now and show you guys those images. All right, what did you guys think? In a vacuum, I think you could get away with the 35 and the 50 millimeter crop modes, and obviously there's a difference in compression, right? But I think not comparing side by side, you could get away with it. what's interesting to me is the different, like the lens on the Q2 is very, very sharp. And oddly enough, the Voigtlander that I just put on here, it's the first time I've shot it, was really sharp as well. It has a little more contrast. I feel like the Leica and even the 7 Artisans lens that's imitating a Leica needed a bit more contrast and saturation in post. But again, that's all manageable in post. And I would say that of all the lenses I shot, the sharpest lens was the Q2 lens, and also the Fuji 16 millimeter lens were the two sharpest ones. But they're all fairly sharp. I don't think that makes a huge difference. I guess I tell you that just because I think you could use the Q2 as a 28, 35, and 50 in a pinch if you had to. And I'm going to make a future video on this. I'm going to talk about the sensor differences. I think if I get a chance to do that maybe for tomorrow's video, I'll talk about like the mental gymnastics that I'm going through. And part of that is related to, I'm going to Nevis in a month, the situation around it and the kit that I want to bring, but I don't want to bring. And this is actually why I rented this Q2 now, because instead of buying it and not liking it or returning it or whatever, I wanted to test this stuff out right now. And so we'll talk about how the Q2 in my mind could work and how the Q2 has so many compromises that I'm not so sure in a future video. I don't know. Comments below, guys. What do you think crop modes? I just want to show you guys what it looks like. Again, it's not perfectly scientific. The actual field of views are a little different, and different lenses make different types of images, you know, different contrast and different sharpness, but that's what I got. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.